All right. It's fucking Tuesday. It says I'm live? Nice. Oh my god, I'm getting so many emails. Bernie, I will be pushing for a moratorium on the construction of data centers that are powering the unregulated sprint to develop and deploy AI. The moratorium will give democracy a chance to catch up and ensure that the benefits of technology work for all of us, not just the 1%. Okay. Bernie. Bernie's just like, I don't know, man.
Good girl.
Oh, man. All right. I think we're going to get ready to do the thing. The old streaming thing. Uber Eats alum lands $14 million seed from A16Z to fix WhatsApp chaos for LATAM's doctors. What does that even mean? $14 million seed to do what? With Leona, patients continue to send messages on WhatsApp, and doctors receive and manage communication through the startup's mobile app. This app sorts all messages in order of priority, suggests responses, and allows other team members to reply to patients on the doctor's behalf. Solving the WhatsApp communication challenge in Latin America is critical because, according to Marin, patients in LATAM often choose their doctors based off their willingness to communicate using this channel. That's interesting. WhatsApp is just not really, I mean, it's a thing in the US, but it's not really a thing like it's everywhere else, you know? It's not like WeChat, where like the entire Chinese economy runs on WeChat. And I feel like in Europe and in Latin America, that's WhatsApp effectively. Like everything is WhatsApp. How do you evaluate a good company to be employee number 100 at? It's a good question. There's a blog post that this guy, this VC wrote that I thought was actually pretty good. Maybe you've seen it. Let's see. Here we go. I'll post this in the chat. I thought it was pretty good. He actually goes through, I think, a lot of the main things that you want to dig into when you go and join a startup. And I think in some ways this is like more important as the company gets a little bit bigger or gets in that like Series A to Series C stage. Because that's where things get a little weird, you know, like seed stage, you know, like the company's just like, you're still just trying to figure it out, you know? But when you get to Series A, Series B, maybe even Series C, like that's where just like weird shit starts happening because like you're no longer like a tiny startup, but you are not a big company either, you know? But I think if I was going to look for companies to join, I'd want to find something that's like Series B, Series C. Usually those are around 100 people. Look at the valuation, look at how much money they've raised. Obviously, look at their metrics. I made a video about this. Like, I feel like a lot of people are scared to ask like companies they're interviewing at about their metrics. Like, hey, what's your ARR? And companies might not tell you, to be fair. But I think you have a right to ask, and I don't think you should be scared to ask that. I think it's a very normal thing to ask, right? Because what if you like? In my mind, it's like you have two offers, and you're deciding between the two. You want as much information as possible. So if there's any chance of a company like doing shady shit or whatever, you want to know that at least as much as you can in advance, right? It's not always going to be evident, but like I think if you ask for information, then normally it's actually it'll come up, and I think you can get like an idea. What metrics are you asking for? I think in slight order of importance, um, I would say cash. Like how much cash do you have on hand? Like what's the runway of the company, right? Like like cash slash burn rate slash runway. I think you definitely need to have some idea of that because that'll tell you like is the company going to be around. And unfortunately, there are companies that do this where they're like, they'll hire people knowing that they only have 6 months of runway left. And that's a pretty shitty thing to do, but people do that. So I think you want to get an idea of just like how long is the company going to be around for, and then once you have that, then you can start asking about things like revenue, retention is a really big one. You can use metrics like NRR, net revenue retention, as a good way of indicating like, hey, are we able to keep customers, especially nowadays where so many companies are signing up for so many of the same products. It's really hard to get a sense of like, are the customers staying or are they just trying things? Like there's a friend of mine who used this term, called it experimental ARR, ERR, effectively experimental recurring revenue, which is like a company sees like, okay, hey, we need to do something about AI within our sales process. They'll go out and try 7 different AI tools. That didn't really used to happen in the past. Like in the past, you do a POC with maybe 1 or 2 different companies. But nowadays, you have companies signing up for 6 or 7 of the same tools just to try them. And so I think you have to get an idea of like, what is the retention like, the customer retention of this company? And if you have a good idea of like burn rate, runway, revenue, retention, if those things are in good place, then like that is a great foundation to build on. I think you can kind of go from there. The company I work for is being acquired by a global firm. How should I be prepared? I guess it depends on how big the company you're at now is, but having gone through this, like a little bit at least, going from a very small company to a big company, I think it's always unfortunate. Like you have to temper expectations about how fast you can move and the things that you can do. You're working for a bigger company now, and so there's going to be certain processes, bureaucracy, red tape that you just like unfortunately have to contend with, which is pretty annoying. But that's what happens. But with that, I think also there's some good things. Like you can, you may be able to get a better work-life balance if you're into that sort of thing. If you have an opportunity to negotiate, your package at all, I would understand that. I think whenever these type of acquisitions happen, I think one of the biggest things you want to figure out is just if you have equity in your existing company or any sort of ownership, like what are the terms behind that? Is there any acceleration behind it? What are the what's the vesting schedule? Does your existing equity convert? You want to be really clear on those things. Thinking of starting an AWS consulting shop, FinOps, outsourcing, etc. Thoughts? I guess it depends on who you're going after. I think if the high tech startups probably not that great of a customer, but there's a lot of companies out there. You know what I mean? Who might be decent customers. I think the challenge with consulting is like you're just justifying your existence every single day. You know what I mean? And you get treated like that too. Like as somebody who used to work in consulting, like you kind of get treated like shit by the customer usually. So I think the other side of this is like there are companies like is it Anti-Metal? Is that the one I'm thinking of? They're like no, not these guys. I feel like they pivoted. Oh, here we go. This is what I was thinking of. This other Anti-Metal. Oh, it's the same one. Okay, so they must have pivoted. Because if you look at their documentation, all their documentation used to be around AWS cost optimization, which is what I knew them for. But it looks like if you actually, and they still have some of that up, right? Anti-Metal is an AWS cloud cost optimization platform. Like there's another one too called, this girl is in my YC batch. What was her name? It's like right on the tip of my tongue. what is I know her name, but what is the name of the company? Pump. Jesus. Pump.co, maybe? That's what I'm thinking about? Yeah. Um, they're also like an AWS kind of FinOps slash cost optimization company. So I think there's definitely people trying to like optimize all of this, and there's a market for it. I'm just not sure in the consulting space um, what the difference is, right? Like, why would somebody want to use a consultant versus using one of these tools? I think one of the big differences is like if you were to use something like Pump, I think the way that they do it is they essentially buy a bunch of reserve compute and then use that as a foundation to like allocate some of that compute to different companies, and that's how they save a lot of that money. They essentially all pull from like a shared compute bucket, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it looks like they've done reasonably well here. I'm really interested in this anti-metal thing because I didn't know that they were pivoting. It's never been easier. Okay, yeah, whatever. Oh god, scroll jacking is like the bane of my existence. I hate when people do this. Okay, let's just keep going through it. Deployed successfully, but the center of everything we build is a black box. Inside your infrastructure, okay, okay. When it breaks, we chase alerts, okay. See, this is what happens. I just get so lost in this. Like, the faster we move, this isn't engineering, this isn't, okay, rethink infrastructure. See, like, if this was just static, it'd be a lot easier to read and try to understand, like, what do you do? You know what I mean? Avoid API failure, okay. Prepare for growth, like, for everything that happens after you deploy. So is this just like alerting? Is this like an SRE platform, agentic SRE platform? It's kind of reminds me of. Why haven't they launched yet? Interesting. Do I do anything in CPG? I don't. I don't really have any CPG experience, to be honest. I have friends who work in CPG. My wife works in CPG. She knows it very well, right, Fee?
Yeah.
So, if you need CPG advice, let me know. I can hook you up with some consulting. Not for me. Are you gonna join the tech force? I'm in the tech force. I'm actively working. I'm a normal employee these days. I'm like I go in, I fucking put in my punch card and clock in and do my thing, and then I clock out. Like, what was I doing today? I was writing a Python package, which, dude, I swear, like, writing Python is it's actually painful. It's actually painful. Like, I know that sounds dramatic, but to me, it's not a programming language. It really doesn't feel like it. It feels like I'm writing YAML. You know what I mean? It feels like it's declarative, which it is. Like, it is declarative, right? This whole point, it's not really imperative. But it's just like, it doesn't feel good, But anyway, so I wrote a Python package today to do some data anonymization. That was fun. It's like, I do a little bit of that. Yesterday I was on a, multi-hour like planning for 2026 call. So it's not all bad. Like, work isn't terrible. But that's just me these days. No, I will be talking, okay, a little bit later. I want to talk about some of the things that I'm interested in. So if people are going to stick around, we'll talk about that stuff. What area of SF you recommend to live in? Somebody else asked this too, like, hey, should I move to SF? If you want to work in tech and be surrounded by tech and have that be your life, you should move to SF. If you don't want that, you should maybe not move to SF. Like, in my mind, SF is one of those places, like, I hate to say this, but like, I'm not the only one who makes this comparison. Like, it's kind of like a casino in some ways. You go there and you try to get rich, and most people won't. Some people will, and maybe you win a couple $100, right? But like, you can do that here. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really do that anywhere else besides maybe like New York City. But the city itself is also beautiful, and it's awesome. Like, I love SF as a city, even tech aside. But it all depends on, I think, the mindset that you're coming in with. Like, if you're coming in just to work, then like, yes, you should come here. If you're coming in just to like live, then I think it depends on what you're looking for. you know. With that being said, okay, sorry, I didn't answer your question. What area of SF do you recommend to live in? Um, I personally love like Russian Hill, Nob Hill area. I think it has the best of kind of all the worlds. Like you're close to the water, you're really close to downtown. If you work in downtown, if you work in like Soma or Faidai or any of those places. So this is kind of like the northeast quadrant of the city, right? This is up here. It's like this is my kind of favorite part of SF is like all of this stuff. This is also where I think where most people live, to be honest. It's where people go out. It's all of that. Outside of that, I probably wouldn't live in the Mission, although there are like OpenAIs in the Mission. I think Anthropic has an office in the Mission. So there is like stuff to do down here. If you go a little west towards like over here, like Pack Heights, kind of inner Richmond area, tons of great food. Not as close to the city. I think one thing people don't realize is like SF itself, the peninsula is like pretty small, right? It's like 7 by 7 miles. But if you live out here, like if you live on 24th, 25th Street, like when I first moved to SF, I have a funny story. When I first moved to SF, I lived on 33rd Ave in Geary. So it was like, I lived up here. Where is it? 28th, 33rd Ave. I was like, I used to live like right here. And I lived in the back of this house with a guy who I'm pretty sure used to like do heavy drugs, and another guy who was a tattoo artist, and he would do tattoos out of the back of this house that I used to live in. And it would take, and I used to work on Howard, which is like like right around here, and it would take me an hour and 15 minutes to get to work by bus. You know what I mean? Like this is probably 6 miles. But because some of the buses will stop like every other block, it will take you an hour each way to get down there, like hour plus. There are express buses that can get down there a little faster, but it's still like 30 or 40 minutes, you know? So Dogpatch is actually pretty cool. So I've started running down by Dogpatch actually. Yeah, we'll get to CPG. Hold on. I started running by Dogpatch lately, and I've actually really liked it. Like I'll run all the way down here by the Midway, which is a great venue if you're into electronic music. And then I'll run like all the way back up here, like do like this big ass loop, like through Golden Gate Park.
Swearing.
For what? What did I do? You know?